The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him, and he stayed close to the sea. One of the synagogue officials named Jairus came forward. Seeing him, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him, saying, "My daughter is at the point of death. Please come lay your hands on her, that she may get well and live." He went off with him, and a large crowd followed him. There was a woman afflicted with hemorrhages for 12 years. She had suffered greatly at the hands of many doctors, and had spent all that she had. Yet she was not helped, but only grew worse. She had heard about Jesus, came up behind him in the crowd, and touched his cloak. She said, "If I but touch his clothes, I shall be cured." Immediately her flow of blood dried up. She felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. Jesus, aware at once that power had gone out from him, turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who has touched my clothes?" But his disciples said to him, "You see how the crowd is pressing upon you, and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. The woman, realizing what had happened to her, approached in fear and trembling. She fell down before Jesus and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be cured of your affliction." While he was still speaking, people from the synagogue official's house arrived and said, "Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any longer?" Disregarding the message that was reported, Jesus said to the synagogue official, "Do not be afraid, just have faith." He did not allow anyone to accompany him inside, except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they arrived at the house of the synagogue official, he caught sight of a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. So he went in and said to them, "Why this commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep." And they ridiculed him. Then he put them all out. He took along the child's father and mother and those who were with him, and entered the room where the child was. He took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha koum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." The girl, a child of 12, arose immediately and walked around. At that, they were utterly astounded. He gave strict orders that no one should know this, and said that she should be given something to eat. My sisters and brothers, the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Going back to that first reading from Hebrews, reflecting, certain passages, even one line sometimes are good for us to remember, to repeat, to stay centered in the Lord. And that part in the first reading where it basically says, "Persevere in running the race that lies before us." And then this line, "while keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus." Where are our eyes fixed? Where are our thoughts focused? Certainly in the gospel, we have the powerful example of the synagogue official looking to Jesus. "Can you do something for my daughter?" And the woman hemorrhaging, touching his cloak to say, "I believe you can do something." For each of them, their attention was fixed on Jesus. And we know in our day to day, our attention can go in many different directions, and some of them aren't always the best directions, the purest of directions. Again, we think of Agatha today, her feast day, that she absolutely refused to be compromised by her faith, her virginity, her centeredness in the Lord Jesus Christ. We live in a world today where too often in sexuality and in other areas that can be compromised, even in our thoughts and attitudes. We need to keep our attention fixed on Jesus in a good and loving way. Jesus calls us to see each other's goodness. Jesus calls us not to treat another human being as an object of my gratification. Jesus calls us to show the kind of love he showed us and the kind of love he wants to show through us to others. So this day, in our thoughts, in our actions, in our feelings, can we, again, keep our eyes fixed on Jesus? And if our eyes or our thoughts or our feelings get away from Jesus, can we say, Lord, help me get back to you, stay centered in you, and see you as the ultimate fulfillment of our lives and the ultimate ideal of how we're called to live and to love? Just take a quiet moment and see what Jesus is saying to each of our hearts today as we go into the rest of the day. God bless.